Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. You'll notice that on my handout, I have it really geared toward the student. So if there's a lot of things that you see that you already know, great. But hopefully you'll find one or two things that is new to you. So I want to jump just right into the music so I don't get caught on time. I'm going to start with the A flat major. And I'll refer to the music and then back to the front page of my handout as we sort of go along and as I remember things. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you in 30 minutes everything that you need to know or every solution to every individual student problem, but hopefully I'll hit enough things that the student can improve their playing and have a good audition. Obviously, it's an A flat major, so you need to know that scale. You need to know that scale really well. It needs to be easy for you, and you should be able to play it 2 octaves. So you're going to hear this a lot throughout the day, and that is that if you are trying to improve your playing by working on this music, you're working at it the wrong way. This music is going to be quite difficult if you can't play just fundamental basic stuff. And so all the time in my lessons, I'm working with the basics with the kids, and it's not the most fun part, but it's the most important part. And the students who focus on that stuff are the ones that improve the fastest and the most, of course. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've just made notes as I was practicing about mistakes that I was making and things that I needed to watch out for as a performer and things that I know kids will make mistakes on. I teach junior high, and I've taught the high school kids too as they get older, and I've had a couple All-Staters, so I know, sort of what and I've judged on lots of panels, so I know what the judges are listening for. It starts off soft, and sometimes that's really hard for the kids to master, so they need to do lots of soft exercises, lots of soft long tones and things like that. One of the things that you tend to do when you try to play soft is you get really tense. And so it's real important to work on just airflow and reminding the kids to keep the lips buzzing, because that's what's creating the sound. We'll talk about airflow and things like that, but if the lips aren't buzzing, nothing's going to work, either because they're too tight and nervous, or they're not using enough air to make the lips vibrate. So I've made just little notes about things that they need to be thinking about as they play. You're going to notice that if a note is circled, that it has intonation tendencies on an instrument. And if it's a second and third valve combination, like in measure 1 where you have A flat and E flat, those notes sometimes tend to be flat on a trumpet. And so if you're not looking at practicing your long tones in front of a tuner, then you're not going to know what as a student or as a player, you're not going to know what your tendency is. So you first need to find out what your tendency is. And then if you know the tendencies, you're going to crack less notes because you're going to know where the center of the note is. Moving on. And if you have, so in measure 1, I have the brackets also. I put brackets on things. You'll notice that in the page where I have the selection 1, I have my little cheat sheet symbols. So you can refer back to what each of these little things that I wrote means. So a circle note means you need to check with the tuner because it needs to be adjusted due to its fingering or range or my personal tendencies as a player. Trumpet tendencies, first and second valve combinations, A's, E's, D flats. In this instance, in this song, D flats and A's tend to be high. So I talk to my kids a lot about making sure your trumpet works. Okay? Yes, your trumpet needs a third valve slide. I know, I've had a lot of kids, they come in, no, you have to use the third valve slide. I even have to make sure that the kids' first valve slides work, because you need to use that a lot as a trumpet player. And I don't generally do that until they get to the high school or until they're more advanced junior high kids, teaching them about the first valve tendencies. But you will need to know about it. Let's move on. One of the things that the student is going to have to learn to do is take good breaths so that the beginning of the phrases come out nice and clean. I don't know if you're like me, sometimes if you're not breathing and relaxed, then the note doesn't speak. As trumpet players, we all have that problem, right? So your breath, and then I made some notes on the first page that I'll refer to about breathing. Some things that you can refer to help you with that. I don't know if you're aware of the breathing books by Palathian, and Sheridan. But anything that you can do that will exercise your lungs, develop your lungs, learn to relax you, and learn to give you good full breath. Because if you don't have a really good full breath, then your sound is going to be weak and things are going to be much harder for you. So a good breath is it's full and it's in rhythm. I find that I have the best attacks when I breathe and then the air comes in and just goes right back out. So make sure that when you're practicing, you breathe in. Don't hold the tension in your body. Don't breathe and then start your note. Okay? If it's in and right back out, you're going to have a lot more success with your attacks. Okay? A breath that is full and gets you where you need to go and is tension-free and has a really good attack to the note. There's lots of different ways to breathe, and I know that everybody has their opinion on what's best for breathing. But if it gets you where you need to go and it has a nice attack and it's relaxed and full, that's the key elements to it. Okay? Then you have, when I have pickup notes, a lot of times kids will rush those. Okay, so don't let your student rush pickup notes. So I put little little lines above those for full value. I put little asterisks above rhythms that I feel like the kids will either rush through or that they won't place in exactly the right spot. So in measure 3, you have the triplet that's on the and. So make sure that they're aware of that. They also have a tendency to rush that. I think we can move on. The high F I have circled because for me personally I need to kick out on that note, and I think a lot of your kids will too. Obviously we know E flats and Ds are low, and so they just need to be buzzed higher. Moving to the second line, I circled that D again. I might not have circled every single of the same notes, but I try to just to help reinforce to the kid that you need to keep remembering that note. Nice smooth crescendo. The next thing that I think will really help the student is if you look in the second line, second measure, you have the 16th notes up to the high G. If students will think of changing the articulation from ta to T, then that will really help come out. And then you have the slur down to the low G, T, aw, okay? If they can do that well, that whole passage will be much easier, and then they'll find that their endurance will last longer too, okay? And then the crescendo through there, stay strong. They're going to want to play the lower notes softer after that big high G crescendo, so make sure they stay strong through there. Another good breath to this next phrase. Mostly the phrases are 4 measures long, even though sometimes they're broken in the middle by a breath. But I think if the student will think musically as it being a 4-measure goal, then they'll be able to make better decisions about how to play that. The beginning of the third line, again, the dotted 8/16. Anytime you have a dotted rhythm, the kids need to make sure that they're aware of where the smaller note goes. A naturals, again, need to kick out. The high F again, kicking out. E flat. D flat in the third line of the third measure, you're going to need to kick out. And how much just depends on the student and their time spent with their tuner to know where those notes need to go. Moving on, I think that's all sort of pretty self-explanatory. The fourth line, you have these accents in the second measure, and I think that those accents should be played more orchestrally, sort of bigger, as opposed to the accents in the fifth measure, the fifth line, the third measure, where that's sort of just more of a lean into it, an accent. And I'm certainly not the definitive performance of these, but I'll try to, if I can control my nerves here. You know, later we talk to the kids about auditioning and well, let me talk about that first. Practicing in audition situations. If you want your kid to be ready for Allstate, you should put them in front of a group like this and say, okay, play your stuff, because if you can do that with steady nerves, then you're going to be ready for anything they throw at you. Practice audition situations. Let the kids set it up so that they're playing for you, but not just you. And I find that I listen better when I'm not looking at the music sometimes, or I'm not even looking at the kid. So I'll have the kid go away and I'll turn my back and he'll play, and I'll hear things that I've just sort of let slide by. So I think it's important that you do that, and just make notes and judge them and say, listen, I gave you a 5 out of 10 because your scale, it wasn't great. And I think they can see that, and we'll put them in mock situations where they, they listen to each other and they know how they're doing. And then let the kids judge them too. I like to do that. I'll put the kids in a room and say, okay, you're all judges, who wants to play? And they'll go and play, and the kids will make notes and stuff like that. And it's tough because, when they go in the room, they have to play in front of all those people. And so this is very, very helpful. And it gives the kids sort of an ownership into, if their buddy's being musical or not. So you get that feedback like that. And sometimes they're harder on each other than I am on them. Let's see. One of the things that I also like to do with my students is that I like to record them so that they can hear what I'm talking about and they can hear. I had a student who, a great player, worked very hard, but he just wasn't doing some things very naturally. And he would always come out of the auditions, just flabbergasted that he didn't make the group. And I would always tell him, well, it's not that you're not prepared. I mean, you know the notes and the rhythms, but you're not working on your fundamental things that we've been talking about. And once he started taking that to heart, then the next year, he did a lot better, and now he's at SAM doing a great job. So make sure that they understand, just because they got all the notes and rhythm doesn't mean that they're better than the other guy. And they don't want to leave it to luck. If you need to be far and away better than the other people around you, and if you can get that in your head, if you've got 3 kids that sound the same, then you're not going to be just as good as them. You're going to say you can't just depend on luck to make it. You have to be far and away better than the other guy. Don't leave it to chance. Listen to lots of recordings of trumpet players that you want to emulate. So find someone who you really like the way they sound or articulate, and listen to yourself and listen to them. I'm going to try to play a little bit for you. So I'm going to try to show example of some things that I was talking about. So I'm going to start on the 3rd line. Well, it's actually going to be the 4th line is what we're listening for, the articulation of using the T and how much easier it comes out and sounds. I'm going to play it the first time wrong in case I mess up, and then the second, just to relax too. And then the second time I'll try to do it accurately, the way that I would work with the kids. So I'm going to start at the end of the 3rd line. So I got to the high A flat, but I didn't use any of the correct articulations. So now we're going to try it again. Okay, so I got it right the last time there. But you can hear the difference in how much easier and more center of the pitch that was. So I'll start right there and I'll keep going to show the difference in the articulation or the accent. And then I put right there that it's a good place to take a breath in case you can't do the next 2 measures, 2.5 measures. So, and it kind of works right there to take a breath before the rallentando so that you can go 2 more measures to make that phrase. Are there any questions about this one? And then, I'll look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line, the pick up to the 2nd measure. So the line above, I played the accents that they were big and orchestral. And then the next one you just sort of lean. Okay, so just because it's accented doesn't mean it has to be loud all the time. I think that the rest of that is pretty self-explanatory. When you're working on soft and keeping it soft in these things, I talked earlier about making sure that you keep the lips buzzing, okay? And some exercises that you can do to help you with that is just maybe you could do some I practice on the mouthpiece a lot to make sure that the lips are always buzzing. So that's very good. And then if you just keep thinking about the airflow going all the way through the horn, I like to think about every part of the horn has to have air touching it and filling it up all the time, even if you're playing loud or soft. And then you can do free buzzing exercises to help build that strength too. Okay, let's move to the second one.